This video is brought to you by NVIDIA and the Gigabyte RTX 4080 Super Gaming OC GPU, powering technological leaps like DLSS 3 in Horizon Forbidden West. Click the link below to see how NVIDIA and Gigabyte's hardware will transform the way you play, or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers! Alright, some housekeeping to begin with. First of all, new mic, who dis? If it sounds a little different, it's because I'm on the road at the moment. Some of this audio was recorded at home. Other parts were recorded in my hotel room in New York City, which is where I am right now, and there is construction going on literally outside my window. So forgive any messy audio you might hear. It's only temporary, I promise. But yes, right now I'm in New York doing things that I can't talk about yet. They may or may not involve seeing the Mean Girls musical. That is a lie. I'm too busy for that, and I am genuinely sad about it because I unironically love Mean Girls. Just because I'm on the road doesn't mean everything grinds to a halt, mind you. Pretty soon I will upload a preview for Rise of the Ronin. Yeah, some mixed thoughts on that one. Interested to see where it goes, but the opening chapter isn't quite hitting as hard as I would have liked. But yeah, I'll give you the full rundown when that video goes live on the channel very soon. The last thing is that we're pretty damn close to that milli, and fingers crossed, it'd be great if we could get there by the 19th of March because that is my birthday, and I would love to be unwrapping a golden play button on my big day. I don't usually ask for a sub before delivering the substance of a video, but I thought in this one instance I'd make a cheeky exception. Thank you for indulging me, and here comes the news. Alright, I know we've done a lot of bummer industry news this past few weeks, and believe me, there is more of that to come this episode, but why don't we open by chatting about some honest-to-goodness video games, just to mix it up, you know? And what better place to start than the Xbox Partner Webinar, which went live last week. Like most partner showcases that don't contain a Silksong release date, this one didn't exactly bring the house down, but there was still some really impressive stuff shown. The end of show reveal was for Sleight of Hand from New Zealand developer Riff Raff. This studio was founded by the developer of puzzle game Framed, also known as Hideo Kojima's Game of the Year back in 2014. The debut trailer was just a CG one, but it appears to be taking Kojima's brand of tactical espionage action, setting it in a hard-boiled noir setting, and building in deck building elements too, where you have to use a deck of cursed cards that act as your supernatural abilities. Worth keeping an eye to see what it looks like in action. No release window for this one yet. Other new games included The Sinking City 2, the sequel to the Lovecraftian action-adventure game from Frogwares that's now taking a hard turn into horror. That one is coming in 2025, no specific date yet. It's also joined by Creatures of Ava, which is being published by 11-Bit Studios. It's an exploration and creature taming game that is decidedly non-violent, coming in 2024. 11-Bit Studios had some more games in the showcase, including a closer look at The Alters, a sci-fi narrative management game that involves the protagonist cloning himself to manage a planetary settlement where he's trying to find a way off. This one really grabbed me with the reveal, and seeing actual gameplay was actually more impressive, to be honest with you. I'm super into where this is going, and it's definitely very high on my watch list. Hotly anticipated strategy sequel Frostpunk 2 got a firm release date of July 24 this year, and it will come to PC Game Pass on day one. Not a bad pickup for Team Green there. Unknown 9 Awakening is a game that was announced back in 2020 that's essentially had a reintroduction in this showcase. It's an action-adventure game set in the modern day that involves an Assassin's Creed-like conspiracy and shadow organizations, and it's part of a bigger transmedia play from Bandai Namco involving podcasts and comic books and all sorts of stuff. The game's protagonist is played by Anya Chalotra, who played Yennefer in the Netflix Witcher series. Edmond actually got a chance to take an extended look at this one in a hands-off gameplay preview showcasing the combat at a few levels. He says it has some interesting ideas, the main one being your ability to possess enemies and position them in a way where they're able to take each other out, kind of like that Quicksilver scene in X-Men Days of Future Past. It's hard to get a good vibe on it until we actually play it for ourselves though, so I'll reserve any feelings for now. There was also the first Berserker Kazan, a nice looking Souls-like game based on the Nexon series Dungeon and Fighter. There was another trailer for Tales of Kenzaru Zao, which continues to look promising, as well as Capcom's Kinitsugami Path of the Goddess, which will come to Game Pass when it releases sometime this year. On the JRPG front, Atlas confirmed that the original Persona 3 epilogue chapter called The Answer will come to Persona 3 Reload in the form of DLC, which has got its devoted fanbase a little annoyed. And absolutely huge news, Final Fantasy XIV is confirmed to be launching on Xbox on March 21st this year. Finally, after like 10 years on other platforms, it's finally arriving. Last up was a surprise drop. Stalker Legends of the Zone Trilogy is a new package containing the first 3 Stalker games, Shadow of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, and Call of Pripyat. This was actually leaked by mistake earlier, but now it's official, giving you the chance to get all caught up on the series before Stalker 2 arrives, which is still hopefully on track to release on September 5th. Alright, I told you guys there'd be some bummer industry news, and that's coming, but maybe we do some good industry news first. You might recall that some time back, quality assurance workers at Activision expressed their desire to form a union. That's important because QA workers are almost always the first to get sacked when layoffs hit, since their function is regularly being outsourced these days. At the same time, QA is absolutely vital to the game making process, and many developers have said how useful it is to have in-house QA testers who are both experienced in a general sense and experienced with the specific game they're working on. That's led to studios like Digital Extremes embedding QA workers into their community and player support teams, specifically so they can resolve player problems faster. Well, good news for those QA staff, their efforts to set up that union were successful, and this week that union has been voluntarily recognized by Microsoft. The union is made up of 600 QA workers, and the Communication Workers of America say it's actually the largest group of union-represented workers in any US-based gaming company. Its president, Claude Cummings Jr. gave a strong statement of support for Microsoft's decision to recognize the union. Quote, "Time and again, other big companies in the industry have made the decision to undermine and attack their employees when they join together to form a union. Microsoft's choice will strengthen its corporate culture and ability to serve its customers and should serve as a model for the industry," end quote. So that's good news for them, but right now there are a bunch of former Deviation Games employees hearing that news saying to themselves, must be nice. That's because this week the Sony-backed Deviation Games shut down. Now, you may not have heard of this studio, and that's because they haven't actually released a game yet, but they were working on something big for Sony, and now they'll never get the chance to show what they had cooking. Deviation was a studio formed in 2020 by Jason Blundell and Dave Anthony, who were both directors on the original Black Ops trilogy at Treyarch. It was a studio built to make blockbuster AAA games, and in 2021 it was announced they had partnered with PlayStation to make an original AAA IP and staffed up to 100 employees. If this is sounding a little familiar, that's because we've been talking a lot about Ascendant Studios lately, another AAA studio formed by a former Call of Duty developer who signed a deal with EA to make an original AAA IP. That obviously didn't go too well for them, as we've spoken about on many occasions. Either way, it was clear that Deviation was in some trouble when in 2022 they let go of around 90 staff. Now, just this week, COO Christy Stull announced on LinkedIn that the studio was closing. No further details were shared here, but given what we know about PlayStation's mass layoffs and project cancellations from a couple of weeks ago, it's probably not too far off the mark to assume that this unannounced project was cancelled in mid-2023, and perhaps then the studio tried and failed to find investors or publishers to get a new project off the ground. It is a very common story at the moment, at a time when games are regularly being cancelled before their release, or after their release if they're a live service, or delisted from sale years after their initial release if the CEO thinks they can get a tax break on it. That may be what's happening at Warner Brothers right now. In addition to shelving and destroying both the Batgirl and Acme movies before they could even be released, the ailing media conglomerate has announced that they're planning to retire all of the games ever published under Warner Brothers' Adult Swim Games label without providing any confirmation that they'll ever bring them back. Now, this is a label that has put out some really interesting indie games in the past, including the likes of Rainworld, Headlander, and Jazzpunk. But this week, some of the developers behind those games started alerting people to the fact that they were getting notices from Warner Brothers saying that these games were being retired from sales from digital storefronts like Steam due to, quote, business changes, and the developers obviously couldn't do anything about that. The first one to alert people to this was Owen Reedy, developer of a puzzle game called Small Radios Big Televisions, who immediately put his game up on his website to download for free. You can literally go to his website right now and get his game free of charge. According to a few outlets who have reached out to other Adult Swim developers, they say the games would be removed from Steam within 60 days, but other than that, details are vague. They don't actually know whether they're going to be removed from sale or deleted completely, wiping it from people's libraries, or what. It's still a big mystery. Polygon talked to Michael Molinari, developer of Sound Dodger Plus, who, quote, pleaded with the rep to transfer ownership of the game to my company as I still retain all IP and game rights, end quote. He'd go on, quote, I sent him a link to Steam's transfer page and explained clearly that it takes literally 3 clicks to transfer ownership to me. He rejected my request, end quote. The rep said that this was due to resource constraints and limited capacity. But come on, man, 3 clicks? According to Steam, the entire publisher catalog is only about 20 games all up. Molinari's in the position where he's legally allowed to republish his game, but that would wipe away all the Steam data on it, like reviews, guides, and achievements, and all mention of Adult Swim, including the people at Adult Swim who helped get the game out, something he's uncomfortable with from a preservation and due credit point of view. It's also just a very concerning blow for games preservation. Hopefully, in the best case scenario, most of these games get republished by the developers once again, but stuff like this is a reminder of how little these companies actually care about video games, being willing to take them down so no one can enjoy them, all in the name of claiming a tax break. Warner Brothers are doing a lot of this lately, but I definitely expect other publishers to follow their lead in the future. And finally, some very sad news to finish up this block. Akira Toriyama has passed away at age 68. Toriyama was of course the artist who created Dragon Ball, the cultural impact of which is impossible to overstate. That was a series that essentially created a whole generation of anime lovers in the Western world and went on to influence everything from video games to hip hop. Of course, Toriyama had an incredibly strong presence in the world of video games too. He was the character designer on every iteration of Dragon Quest, the first console RPG, and very likely Japan's favorite video game series of all time next to Pokemon, as well as Chrono Trigger, very likely the favorite SNES RPG of anyone who is old enough to remember it. And of course, Xbox fans would be very mad were I not to mention Blue Dragon. Tributes have flooded in ever since the news was announced on the official Dragon Ball website. Here are just a few. Yuji Horii, the creator and designer of the Dragon Quest series, said, quote, "I'm still filled with a sense of disbelief at this all too sudden news of Toriyama-san's passing. To think that he would die, I can't put anything more into words than this. It's really, truly heartbreaking." Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi said, quote, "I believe Mr. Toriyama taught me what it means to be a professional and what work is. I respected him from the bottom of my heart. We pray for his soul from the bottom of my heart," end quote. Hiroshi Matsuyama, CEO of CyberConnect 2, who made Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and a number of other Dragon Ball Z games, apparently broke down crying during a work meeting and subsequently closed the studio for a day of mourning. Eiichiro Oda, creator of One Piece, said, quote, "He alone passed the baton from one generation where people thought reading manga would make you stupid to the generation where manga could be enjoyed by all, children and adults alike. He showed us a dream that manga can do so many things, that it can connect you to the world. It was like watching a superhero come to life," end quote. He was an artist that brought so much to the world, gone too soon. Rest in peace, Akira Toriyama. And thank you. A quick lightning round to finish off. BAFTA nominations are out. Game of the Year nominees include Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder, and Dave the Diver. Baldur's Gate 3 is certainly the frontrunner for obvious reasons, but also the fact that it scooped up 10 other BAFTA nominations, narrowly edging out Spidey's 9 and Alan's 8. This is the last big 2023 awards ceremony, after which time we patiently await Jeff Keighley's annual Trailerama in December. Will he let the winners speak for more than 8 seconds this year? We'll see, I guess. Temtem developer Crema Games have announced that Temtem will not be getting any more content or feature updates. In the upcoming patch, all monetization will be removed from the game, making everything purchasable with in-game currency. The Temtem community is pretty pissed about this, absolutely tanking the Steam reviews into the mostly negative 20% territory. In their eyes, Crema promised to make Temtem an MMO Pokemon-style game that would regularly deliver new content, but Crema says that was never the intention, and citing commercial realities of their operation, have said it's necessary for them to move on. They're currently work on Temtem Swarm, which is basically vampire survivors with Temtem. It does feel like a disappointing follow-up to a game that dared to take Pokemon head on. There were, of course, more layoffs this week because that's just how it goes. In 2022, it was a new NFT scam every week, and in 2024, it's new job losses every week. Australian-based Blowfish Studio have lost 31 people this week. Spearhead Games launched Unforetold Witchstone in January of this year, and 2 months later, they've announced that the studio is laying off the majority of the staff, 40 people. Finally, Eggnut Games had previously put out the Tales Noir adventure games, and they're shutting down, resulting in 15 job losses. It really does feel a bit relentless, except when it comes to Japan, where it seems as though most companies over there haven't had the same wave of redundancies that have affected studios in the West. In fact, they're actually hiring more and increasing salaries. Take this week, for example, where Capcom announced that they were giving all staff a 5% pay bump and a 28% jump in salary for new graduates, which likely suggests that grads were getting a very raw deal before this. Capcom justified it thusly, quote, "With this increase in starting salary, Capcom is pursuing further investment in human capital and the acquisition of exceptional talent," end quote. That is a pretty stark contrast to the typical labor news we're getting these days. Some quick sales data if you're interested. The Persona series has hit 22.6 million lifetime sales. This was at 17 million back in November of last year, so it seems like Persona 3 Reload was really successful. Indie hit Balatro has blasted through 500,000 units in just 5 days, with the developer hinting that they still had plenty of ideas about other things they could do with their novel spin on the poker formula. Finally, sad day for Team Red and Team Blue, and I'm not talking about Nintendo or PlayStation, I'm talking about Rooster Teeth fans, because this week the organization announced that it was closing its doors after 21 years in operation. The company is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, who right now are totally cash-starved, Cancelling, cutting, and delisting anything that isn't nailed down. The closure will result in 150 job losses, and that is not including the contractors or freelancers who regularly contributed content. It's a bummer because Rooster Teeth was one of the OG online outlets back in the early days of YouTube. They certainly had their fair share of scandal and staff churn over the years, and they never managed to find their footing in recent times, but they do leave behind a legacy that many people will not soon forget, and I hope all affected staff are able to find new gigs soon. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, in addition to all that Xbox Partner Direct stuff, there were some other announcements. First up, and perhaps most interesting of all, is the release date announcement for the Hades mobile port. This one is dropping on March 19th, aka my birthday. Sadly, it is a Netflix exclusive. Game that is, not my birthday. But hey, if Netflix want to sponsor my birthday and make it an exclusive, I'm up for that. The Hades port does support Bluetooth controllers, 60 FPS, cloud saves, and offline play, making for a pretty impressive package. I'm sure we can expect this to hit non-Netflix mobile platforms at some point in the future. Don't believe me? Well, get a load of this. That Valiant Hearts mobile game that was a Netflix exclusive is coming to all consoles and PC right now. As in, it was shadow dropped on March 7th, so it's already out. It's meant to be pretty solid, but nowhere near as strong as the original. Strange Scaffold is a studio that put out the critically acclaimed El Paso Elsewhere recently, a title that did so well it scooped up a DICE Award nomination. The studio is back with something very, very different. It's called Life Eater, and it's a fucked up horror game where you need to track the movements of your victims so you can kidnap them and sacrifice them to a dark god that may or may not be real. The whole thing is played out in some sort of video editing timeline, which somehow makes the whole thing even more creepy, especially for Stuart, most likely, editing this video. It looks really interesting. It's just got a release date, April 16th, exclusive to PC. Nintendo also decided to celebrate Mario Day. That's March 10th, by the way, if you have no idea what I'm talking about. They had a few low-key announcements of their own. The first were ports of a few of their classic Switch games, Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Paper Mario is arriving 23rd of May, and Luigi's Mansion is dropping 27th of June. They also announced that a few Mario spin-off games for Game Boy would be coming to Nintendo Switch Online, including Dr. Mario, Mario Gold, and Mario Tennis. Those should be available by the time this goes up. Finally, old mate Shiggy Momo, he did the whole "this is Miyamoto" thing on Twitter again, and he announced the next Super Mario Bros. Movie is in production, and the current release date is April 2026. He dropped the tidbit that we're, quote, thinking about broadening Mario's world further, and it'll have a bright and fun story, end quote. So what can we expect? More Donkey Kong, a Zelda multiverse crossover, a Smash Brothers sequence full of cameos for the YouTube What You Miss crowd? Guess we'll have to wait to find out. Hey, remember when we said last week that Warner Brothers are all about the whole free-to-play live service thing now? Well, guess what? Multiverses, the free-to-play Warner Brothers Smash Brothers clone, has been re-announced for all platforms bar the Switch, and it's launching on May 28th. This game was actually pretty alright during the beta period before they shut it down, and now they've rebuilt the game in Unreal Engine 5 and more importantly implemented new online netcode. They've also announced a PvE mode for people who aren't so keen on getting their ass handed to them by Scooby-Doo. And finally, there were rumors that we'd get a Ghost of Tsushima PC port announcement this week, and those rumors were correct. It'll release on May 16th, and the package will include the Iki Island expansion and the Legends mode, which is fucking awesome, by the way, like surprisingly excellent. Don't skip that. It also features all the PC bells and whistles, including ultra-wide support, NVIDIA DLSS, and AMD FSR. This one was always a looker, so it'll be fantastic to see it running on high-end PC hardware. And can you imagine that opening sequence in ultra-wide? Sign me up, baby. So, what came out last week? Well, remember Berserk Boy, that one that looks like Mega Man crossed with Sonic? It dropped on PC and Switch, and it's meant to be a pretty great time. It's sitting at 97% very positive on Steam, but that's still with less than 100 reviews counted. It's sitting at a mighty 84 on OpenCritic though, with nearly 30 critic reviews counted. VGC scored this one 4 out of 5, saying, quote, Berserk Boy is a great modern take on Mega Man style gameplay and one of the better recent attempts to bring the 16-bit era into the 2020s. The story is lacking somewhat, but it's got it where it matters with solid platforming and satisfying combat, end quote. Biggest release of the week was most certainly Unicorn Overlord, the latest thing out of 13 Sentinels developer Vanillaware. A lot of hype for this one given the pedigree of the studio, and in classic Vanillaware fashion, Unicorn Overlord does not disappoint. It's sitting at a mighty 88 on OpenCritic, making it one of the highest rated releases of the year. IGN scored it a 9 out of 10, saying, quote, any issues I had with Unicorn Overlord ended up feeling like nothing more than nitpicks. The tactical combat system is unique and complex while also being easy to understand, expertly blending blending mechanics from many of its peers with smart new additions of its own, end quote. And Nintendo Life were in agreement, also scoring it a 9 and saying, quote, it's a smorgasbord of visual delights, intricate systems, and addictive gameplay loops that all come together to create a delightfully thrilling and deep tactical RPG. It's so easy to get absorbed into everything the game offers, and we lapped it all up, end quote. A brief correction, I did say that this was coming to PC as well last week, but that was incorrect, so I apologize. Right now this is only available on consoles. Let's hope it makes the jump to the superior platform soon. Sorry, not sorry. The new WWE game is out and it got some reviews, strong 82 on OpenCritic. That is literally all the time I'm willing to devote to a wrestling game. Again, sorry, not sorry. Contra Operation Galuga is a new attempt to revive Konami's classic 2D run-and-gun franchise, and it seems like developer Way Forward did a pretty good job with this one. It's sitting at a safe but strong 75 on OpenCritic. Press Start gave this one an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, it retains the classics white-knuckle challenge, awesome level design, boss creativity, and firepower, while adding some modern touches to make the game palatable and enjoyable by more people. It's not particularly long, but playing through once has never been the draw of a Contra game. It's a game that begs to be replayed and perfected. If you've been curious to try Contra, this is a great way to get into the franchise, end quote. And finally, we have Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story. This is the new Gold Master Series title from the history-focused studio Digital Eclipse. These are kind of like interactive, playable documentaries about games and creators from history. The first game was about Karateka, the debut game from Prince of Persia creator Jordan Mechner, and this second one is about cult British designer Jeff Minter. Reviews for this might have not dropped at the time of writing, but Edmond has been playing through this one. He says he really loved the making of Karateka because he was quite a fan of the game, but this one he went into knowing absolutely nothing about Jeff Minter, and he had this to say, quote, preserving video game history is so much more than just emulation and making sure that games of our past remain playable. It's also about making sure the stories behind their creators are kept alive too. It's those oral histories, the work in progress documentation, photographs of key events that help paint the whole context around games and their makers. Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, really rammed home how important that was for me, because this was someone I knew little to nothing about, but I feel very grateful to have learned about him now. I really hope that others take a chance on this one and have the same learning experience I did. I hope Digital Eclipse keeps making these titles forever. So what's coming out this week? Well, kicking things off is the PS5 port of Hi-Fi Rush. The announcement for this ended up being quite muted, hard to hear over the hubbub and hand-wringing going on over Microsoft's plans to go multi-platform, but it was announced a few weeks ago, and this week it's dropping. On the 18th of March, it'll be available on the PSN. There is a physical release planned, but there's no date on that, and it's happening through limited run games, because when you're a $3 trillion company and the third largest gaming platform, you have to outsource your physical media to an independent manufacturer, I guess. Snark aside, Hi-Fi Rush rules, and Sony ponies, you're in for one hell of a treat with this one. More stuff for my American audience, and I guess my Japanese audience as well. MLB The Show arrives for all consoles on March 19th. I know nothing about it except that it's a baseball game, and the only thing I know about baseball is that some dude named Shohei Ohtani signed a $700 million 10-year contract with the Dodgers, which may well be the largest single deal in sports history. I thought you guys were all about NBA and NFL. I had no idea that there was still that much money in baseball. Respect to Ohtani, get that bag. Only other release this week is for Alone in the Dark, the reboot of the classic survival franchise that kind of started it all. I don't know about this one, to be honest. The little preview prologue thing that I played a while back didn't grab me. There hasn't been much released in terms of gameplay or trailers. There's been like no marketing pump behind it. It doesn't bode particularly well. Here's hoping I'm being paranoid, but I guess we'll find out when it launches on March 20th for all platforms bar the Switch. Alrighty, put this on your radar. At the most recent State of Play, we got a new look at Judas, the next thing from Ken Levine, the guy who led the development of the Bioshock games. One of the people that Levine worked with on games like System Shock, Bioshock, and SWAT 4 was John Che, who went on to form his own studio in Canberra, Australia. That studio would deliver the excellent Void Bastards, a first-person roguelike shooter with a vibrant cel-shaded art style and plenty of topspin on the writing. That title did well enough that the studio could work on a sort of sequel, and this is it, Wild Bastards. It takes the same art style and roguelike concepts, but applies them to a sci-fi western setting involving a number of outlaws being chased across the galaxy. Each of them has their own core kit that can, of course, be augmented with various roguelike upgrades. For me, I'm really just into the art style and really interested to see its evolution since Void Bastards. That game all happened on board ships full of narrow corridors. This has much bigger spaces, more environment diversity, while also managing to make the colors and contrast pop even more vibrantly than before. The studio has a fantastic track record, so there's every reason to suspect they'll continue to maintain it when Wild Bastards as it launches sometime this year. There's no date yet, but if you'd like to wishlist it or stay up to date, I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and you know what? We've got some good stuff this week. Epic have really come through. Right now you can still grab retro-inspired platformer Astro Duel 2, but later this week that'll be replaced by 2 games. The first is The Bridge, a puzzle game from back in 2013, but the second is the excellent Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I guess it's like a consolation prize for Embracer Group binning the new Deus Ex game so they could pay off a single quarter of their interest payment, which is around $225 million. Stupid fucking company. Xbox Game Pass updates came in just as last week's show was getting wrapped up, but we got time for them now. Very excited to see Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun on this list, the absolutely superb boomer shooter that released last year. You don't even need to be a Warhammer fan to enjoy this one, I promise you, it's just a good time. For the kids, there's a Paw Patrol game on there that'll keep them busy for a while, as will SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, but you're just as likely to enjoy that one as they are. If you're looking for some of that Suda 5-1 craziness, then No More Heroes 3 arrives today on Game Pass, and if it's day one releases you're after, then MLB The Show will also be available, and it's not available on PS Plus, which is funny because it's a Sony published title, but that's how it's been for the last few years, and Sony seemed perfectly happy with that arrangement. Headline offering has got to be the Control Ultimate Edition, which contains the base game plus the DLCs, one of which creates a direct tie to the incredible Alan Wake 2. Control is essential playing if you're falling down that Remedy rabbit hole, and this is a great chance to check it out before the sequel drops, which Remedy are working on, but certainly don't expect it anytime soon. Outside of that, the only other shout is for Small Radio's Big Television, that one we mentioned earlier when we spoke about Warner Brothers delisting all of the Adult Swim games. This is an indie puzzle game released back in 2016, and to keep it alive, the developers is giving it away for free. You can grab it from the developer's website, link below the like button. Alright, time for our feel-good story for the week. Right now, all eyes are on Dragon's Dogma 2 as one of the most hotly anticipated and most hyped games of 2024. And if the previews are to be believed, Capcom are well and truly on their way to delivering yet another banger. For all the excitement about the incredible visual scale and combat that Dragon's Dogma 2 is serving up, there has been one thing that has captured people's attention like nothing else, and that thing is this piece of meat. It was first spotted during a preview and was so succulent and so tantalizing that we just had to know if it was real because we all wanted to eat it. Well, except the vegans, but I mean, they probably did too, they just didn't want to admit it. Austin Walker of Remap was determined to get to the bottom of this, and so he asked the game director, Hideaki Itsuno, if this was a rendered asset or an actual video of a real-life piece of meat. He made the ask through a Capcom PR rep, and the PR rep said that Itsuno shrugged impishly in response. Not very helpful, Capcom PR person, should have pressed him a little more. Luckily, Japanese website 4gamer.net managed to get to the bottom of it. They interviewed Itsuno and asked him directly about the meat. No PR person to hide behind this time, and thus cornered, Itsuno was compelled to give an honest answer, quote, "For several months, we had been holding a meeting about what's so interesting about camping with the camping enthusiasts on our team, and one of them said, you can watch as many pictures as you want of people grilling meat. This led us to its introduction into the game. It's okay to use expensive CG to represent meat, but we decided to spend the same amount of money on better quality meat, so we decided on the current format. Each type of meat you can get in the game has a different image when grilled," end quote. We have finally arrived at a situation where dev teams are just buying real things and filming them rather than creating in-engine assets. And allow me to be the first to say, Itsuno, you're a fucking genius, and I'm sure Rockstar's dev team are thinking long and hard about their approach to rendering weed in GTA 6. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from me for now. Like I said, I'm on the road at the moment. When this video goes live, I'll be in New York doing secret things that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but I'm excited to talk about them very soon. It is a big week, because not only am I here in New York, but next week is, as I mentioned, my birthday. And I'm hoping for one present and one present only, 1 million subscribers. We're only a few thousand off, and I have a place on my wall all picked out for that golden play button. If you would like to help me get there, then please do hit the like button on the video, subscribe, and ding the notification bell. I appreciate all of your support. Have a fantastic week. Thanks for tuning in, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, NVIDIA and Gigabyte Aorus. Now, some of you may remember that towards the back end of last year, this video's sponsors, NVIDIA and Gigabyte Aorus, did a custom all-white PC build to give away to one lucky shill-up viewer. Well, I'm delighted to announce that someone did win that PC, a man by the name of Benjamin. He was kind enough to send me some photos of the PC after he got it. clearly very chuffed. A huge congrats to him. Very happy to see him so happy. If you're thinking to yourself, must be nice, then don't worry, because I'm already working with Nvidia and Gigabyte on another custom-built PC that we'll be giving away very soon, so do stay tuned for that one. I'm always very happy to partner with Nvidia and Gigabyte because their range of GPU hardware is at the very cutting edge of PC performance, delivering you the horsepower and new technologies needed to power games like the upcoming Horizon Forbidden West PC port. The Gigabyte RTX 4080 Super Gaming OC GPU has everything you need to make Horizon Forbidden West look and run its very best. It allows you to utilize DLSS 3, the single best means of increasing frame rates since it utilizes AI to insert additional frames between those being natively rendered. This can result in up to a 100% performance increase in a number of games that support that technology, and that is arriving day one with Horizon Forbidden West PC port. It also enables you to utilize NVIDIA DLAA, which is a technology that results in a sharper image when you're using DLSS, making even minor details look absolutely stunning at the 4K resolutions you're probably shooting for with a GPU as powerful as a 4080 Super. Horizon Forbidden West on PC also supports NVIDIA Reflex, which is a technology that reduces input latency, meaning that your game feels snappy and responsive to play. And of course, the Gigabyte RTX 4080 Super Gaming OC GPU gives you the power to crank those settings up, play at 4K resolution, and even play in ultra wide if you have a monitor that supports it. The Gigabyte RTX 4080 Super Gaming OC GPU features the powerful WindForce cooling system to keep the card cool under load. It also has full RGB support, so it'll look great on your rig, and most importantly, it comes with up to 4 years of warranty support, so when you buy from Gigabyte, you know that you can buy with confidence. Nvidia and Gigabyte are great supporters of this channel. I'm always very happy to profile the hardware they put out and what it can do, and also very happy when I get to give some of that stuff away to you guys. So stay tuned for another PC giveaway real soon, but in the meantime, if you'd like to grab a Gigabyte RTX 4080 Super Gaming OC GPU, I've left a link to the product page below. Thanks Nvidia and Gigabyte Aorus for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.